This is Health Call Online, the place for extended versions of interviews you hear in a weekly radio broadcast, the Health Call Radio Hour, now appearing on more stations around the country through national syndication. We're going to focus today on mushrooms and the magic of mushrooms. No, not quite that type. We've covered that before, not the psychedelic aspects, more the traditional and untraditional health benefits of mushrooms. You know, people have been using mushrooms to enhance their health since, I think, back in the Bronze Age. But today, there's a new look at how mushrooms can improve cognition, mood, your immune system, and much more. To do that, I've reached out to Tony Shields. He is the founder of FreshCap Mushrooms, kind of the leading online source for information about all of this. Tony, I'm glad you're here. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to chat mushrooms today.
Awesome. Tell me something I might not know about mushrooms.
One of the craziest things about mushrooms that you might not know and about your audience might not know is that not all mushroom supplements are actually made from mushrooms. And when I say that, I think that surprises a lot of people.
Yeah.
But here's the quick answer to that. Mushrooms are made up of two parts, right? You have the mushroom fruiting body and you have the mushroom mycelium. But what you can do is you can just grow that mycelium out on grain and, grind up that grain and provide that as a mushroom supplement. The problem is it might not have all of those beneficial compounds that make the difference. Whereas the fruiting body part actually has the compounds that make the difference. It has the history of use, all this kind of stuff. So when people are shopping for mushrooms, they might buy a mushroom supplement that doesn't actually really contain any kind of mushroom that they would think of as a mushroom. I think that's surprising to a lot of people.
Yeah, I think so too. We'll talk about supplements and what they are used for, all the varieties that there may be in just a moment. So just to be clear, when I'm buying mushrooms in the supermarket, the little white button mushrooms, that's the fruiting body you're talking about, right?
Exactly. That's the thing that most people think of as a mushroom. Technically it's called a fruiting body. It's a reproductive part of the mushroom, but it's also part of the mushroom that has all those wonderful benefits that we know and love.
So tell me your backstory. How did you fall in love with mushrooms and turn that into a business?
Well, I've been passionate about mushrooms my whole life for whatever reason. I can't tell you exactly why. I've just always found them to be super interesting. I love going to the forest and find them. As a kid, it was kind of like finding Pokemon or something, right? And the interesting thing about mushrooms is, some will, just have these nice nutritional benefits. Some can take you on a crazy adventure in your mind, and others can actually kill you. So they're actually just really inherently interesting to me. And that led eventually to me growing mushrooms and learning more about mushrooms. But the more I grew them and the more I learned about the potential health benefits, the more I wanted to pivot into the functional mushrooms. And that's kind of what we mostly focus on today. So it's really been a lifelong journey, but the best thing about mushrooms is there's always something more to learn.
Got it. So you actually had a commercial mushroom farm where you were raising them for sale, and now you've headed in a different direction. Are you still raising mushrooms and converting them into supplements, or are you buying these products now?
Yeah, so we work with a variety of growers all over the world because what we really want to do, our ethos has always been, we want to get the best mushrooms in the world and get those to the people so they can really make a difference in their life. We started growing when we were doing it on a very small scale, but we were more on the gourmet side, just a little bit on the medicinal side. So we were growing mushrooms on a small scale to sell at the farmer's market. But once we started scaling up and just getting the best mushrooms in the world, we started working with other organic growers.
Got it. So tell me about what is the leading medicinal use of mushrooms today? What's most popular?
So if you wanted to think about the one thing that unifies all functional mushrooms, it's this idea of supporting immune health, right? And when you think about immune health, people are thinking about it a lot more today, but in general, this is really the foundational thing that supports the rest of our overall health, right? If your immune system is not functioning properly, all sorts of things are going to go wrong. Whereas if your immune system is functioning properly in that Goldilocks zone, then you have a great foundation for overall health. So mushrooms contain something called fungal beta-glucans. These are little molecules that are able to interact with and support our immune system. And that's the main thing that mushrooms do. That being said, all of these different fungal beta-glucans are different sizes and different shapes and can interact with our immune system in different ways. Not only that, each of these individual mushrooms contains a variety of different compounds, which can also have other health benefits. So we can dive into each one of these, but I like to think of each of the main superstar functional mushrooms as kind of superheroes that all have their own superpowers. Some might be good for energy, some might be good for brain health, but again, they're all good for supporting that immune system.
Yeah, we'll talk through some of those superstars in just a second. Do I get this benefit from eating them whole? And if I cook them, does that destroy the benefit?
So there's kind of two parts to answer that question. So yes, you can get nutritional benefits from eating whole mushrooms. The thing is, though, it's a lot about dose and a lot about extraction. So if you just eat mushrooms, our body is not necessarily designed to break that down. Mushrooms are made up of tough cells called chitin, and inside of that is where you get all those beneficial compounds. So if you cook the mushrooms, absolutely, that will break down some of those tough cell walls, get some of those compounds bioavailable, but you'd really have to eat a lot of mushrooms to get the same benefits that you could get from an extract. If you perform an extract like a hot water extract, an alcohol extract, or a lot of times you perform both and combine them to make a dual extract, that makes all of those beneficial compounds like the beta-glucans, like the triterpenes, cordyceps, and all these compounds, it makes them bioavailable, makes them easier for our body to use. That being said, though, if you look at historical use and a lot of the research, there is a wide variety of different preparation methods, different extracts. Some benefits have been shown from just dehydrated fruiting body powder. Some benefits have been shown from just making a tea, whereas other mushrooms, you might need a more concentrated extract. So it really is a broad range. But to get back to your question, yes, just eating mushrooms, make sure you cook them, can have some really good nutritional benefit.
Okay. So let's talk about what you call your superstar mushrooms. And the one that I think we'll lead off with here is lion's mane. I remember a few years ago buying some powdered lion's mane, and I think I actually bought it from you, and used it in coffee, and allegedly had some cognitive, some brain benefits somehow. Tell me more about, is that the case? How does it work? How are people using it? All that stuff around lion's mane.
Yeah, lion's mane is probably one of the most popular functional mushrooms right now. And the reason is because it contains a dynamic duo of compounds that aren't found anywhere else in nature. And these are very special compounds because they are able to induce something called nerve growth factor, which is used in our brain to promote not only the protection of neurons, but also even potentially the growth of new neurons. And the reason why lion's mane is so special is because this kind of thing isn't really found anywhere else. Sure, you can synthesize compounds that might be able to do the same thing, but they're really difficult to synthesize. And also, they're often too big to cross the blood-brain barrier, so they can't actually get into your brain to do all these things. What makes lion's mane so special is that it contains these compounds that are able to induce nerve growth factor, help to grow nerve cells, help to protect nerve cells, but they're also small enough that they can cross the blood-brain barrier and actually get into your brain. Not only that, they're also shelf stable, which is kind of uncommon for these type of molecules. So if you perform an extract or dehydrate some lion's mane, it can stay in a bottle and you can add it into your coffee, kind of like you were doing. And finally, they actually do grow on trees. So these are very natural compounds that come out of a mushroom, and that's what makes it so special. So there has been lots of research done on lion's mane over the years for its brain benefits, but thousands of people, probably even millions of people at this point, are experiencing some of these benefits from lion's mane, which is one of the reasons why it is so popular.
What should I expect to feel or notice after using this product?
Now, a lot of people will feel some clarity. A lot of people say like brain fog kind of goes away. Brain fog is obviously a very vague term. It can mean a lot of different things, but people just feel a lot sharper. Some people will say their memory is improved. A lot of people will also feel a lift in mood. They'll kind of just have a better outlook on all sorts of things because lion's mane is also used for mood. But again, quite often it's kind of this idea of mental clarity, reducing brain fog, improved mood, and improved memory.
How often do I need to use it before I begin to notice some effect?
Now, it really depends. Some people will feel the effect right away, right? Like some people will put the mushroom in their coffee, they'll drink the coffee, and they'll feel really good. For the most part, it might take longer. These things are powerful, but they are natural compounds that often take a little bit of time to feel the full benefit. So for most people, it's like 2 weeks plus before they're going to start to really feel the benefit from something like lion's mane or any functional mushroom, really.
Give me an idea of what is another one of your superstar mushrooms that I may not have heard of.
Yeah, so another really popular mushroom is reishi, which I actually have behind me here for the people who are watching this on video. So reishi is one of the mushrooms with the longest history of use. And this one is more so used for relaxation, for sleep. It contains triterpenes, which have kind of a hypnotic effect. So people use reishi a lot for all of those benefits. It's also really good for your immune system as well. But reishi is one of these examples where you couldn't just eat it, right? It's kind of like rock hard. It's very woody. It's not a gourmet mushroom. You have a hard time eating this mushroom. So the way to use it is to perform an extraction to make a tea, or for reishi in particular, an alcohol extraction is really the way to do it.
So I buy this extract. Is it a powder? Is it a tea bag? How am I using this product?
So there's lots of different ways you can do it. You can have extracts that are powders. So how that's done is you'd take the fruiting body, right? And the manufacturer would dehydrate it. They would cut it up. They would perform a hot water extraction, which is kind of like making a tea on a large scale. Then they would do the same with an alcohol extraction. And then you spray dry that liquid back into a powder. So it ends up being a powder that you can put in your tea, or people will fill capsules with it or whatever. But you can also make a tincture. So if you were to take this same mushroom, if you were to perform a hot water extract, and then if you were to also perform an alcohol extract, you can have a little alcohol tincture where all the compounds are suspended in that tincture. So there's a variety of form factors, but the most common for reishi would be a extracted powder or a tincture.
Give me another one of your superstars. Which one do you like next?
So cordyceps is another one that is really popular, and it's also getting even more kind of infamous because of the HBO show The Last of Us, based off of the video game where the cordyceps fungus kind of takes over the world and turns everyone into zombies. Fortunately, that can't actually happen. It can happen to bugs. So bugs do get infected with a species of cordyceps. It does kind of turn them into a zombie, and eventually the mushroom will fruit through their head. But it doesn't happen to humans. In fact, for humans, it's quite the opposite. Cordyceps is used as an energy mushroom. So cordyceps contains something called cordycepin, which is able to mimic adenosine in a lot of the body's natural processes, one of which being the production of ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So that's why people get a lot of energy boosting benefits from cordyceps. The other thing it does is just improves the efficiency in which we can take oxygen from our lungs to the rest of the cells in our body, which is why athletes use it, or anybody who wants to feel a bit of an energetic boost. It's kind of popular to use as a pre-workout. And again, it's good for your immune system as well. So cordyceps is another one of these really amazing, popular functional mushrooms.
Shiitake is a popular mushroom. Many people have heard of it. Does it have any real medicinal benefits?
Shiitake is one of those mushrooms that does have medicinal benefits. Again, it's good for your immune system. I don't necessarily classify it as one of these superstar functional mushrooms, but the good thing about shiitake is it is delicious, right? It's one of those ones, unlike reishi, which you can't eat, shiitake, you can chop it up and put it in a soup, and it's pretty darn good. So there's very few of those mushrooms that are both gourmet edibles and powerful functional mushrooms. I would put shiitake in that camp. The other ones would also be like lion's mane is also a really good gourmet edible, powerful functional. And same with maitake is another one of those mushrooms. But yeah, shiitake isn't one of those ones that you typically see, sold as a powder or as an extract. But it's just a good, delicious, healthy mushroom.
Well, I took you off track there. So what is your fourth superstar mushroom?
So another mushroom that's not technically a mushroom is chaga. So chaga actually is a mushroom, but we don't use the fruiting body. What people call chaga is actually a mass of chaga mycelium and birchwood. It grows naturally on birchwood. It kind of looks like this, lump of coal, basically. Again, it's rock hard, but chaga has these really amazing compounds in it that are good for your immune system. It's also a really powerful antioxidant, one of the most powerful natural antioxidants in the world. And it can also be made into a quite delicious tea. So people have used chaga as a bit of a coffee replacement in the past. So chaga is another one of these really popular ones that grows wild and a lot of people like to use.
Well, I have dropped in on your YouTube channel and I see you out in the woods harvesting, and clearly
Right.
you know what you're doing. There's some danger for all of the rest of us there, huh?
I mean, not as much as a lot of people would think.
Yeah, because
if
that
you
is
go out
the,
into
you know, that's the
woods-
fear. I've seen what looked like the little white button mushrooms popping up on the golf course, and I'm not brave enough to reach down and snag one.
Right. And, that's probably a sensible approach. The truth is, a lot of mushrooms, there's not a lot of mushrooms that could actually kill you. But the thing is, there are some mushrooms that could, which is what causes a lot of the trepidation. And again, it's not a good idea to just go into the wild and randomly eat a mushroom. The truth is, though, it's kind of similar to plants. If you were to go out in the woods and randomly eat a plant or a shrub, that could be just as dangerous because there are also deadly or poisonous plants, but not a lot of people think of it that way. If you're going to wild harvest mushrooms, yes, you definitely want to know what you're doing or go with somebody who knows what they're doing and that you trust. But the truth is, a lot of mushrooms that people wild harvest are pretty easy to identify, and there's not a lot of risk there, but the risk does exist, so it makes sense to be prudent.
These mushrooms that are commercially produced, some of them do make their way into medications, don't they? I mean, we're in commercial medications.
There are certain extracts of mushrooms in certain countries that make their way into commercial medications. If for example, you mentioned shiitake, there is a very specific extract of shiitake that is used in Japan as a commercial medication. But for the most part, these things are just used as natural supplements. Of course, the famous cases like penicillin, right? At the end of the day, that is a fungus. Sure. So mushrooms do have amazing potential to be used as pharmaceuticals, but the way they're most often used today is in a more traditional way.
Yeah, I talked recently with a researcher from the University of Birmingham in England who told me that the DNA of mushrooms is very, very much like our own. Tell me more of what you know about that.
Yeah, that's something that often gets said, and it is pretty interesting, right? The DNA of mushrooms is very close to the DNA of humans. In fact, we share about 60%, I believe, is the number of the DNA. But when you think about it, we also share 60% of our DNA with a banana. So, the truth is,
okay.
Is it a big deal? I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of things. I mean, mushrooms are probably more closely related to humans than they are to plants, which is kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. For example, mushrooms use oxygen and respire CO2, much like humans do, whereas plants do the opposite. Humans digest things with a stomach. Mushrooms digest things by excreting compounds and having the outside kind of be the stomach. So there are some interesting parallels. I would say the DNA one is probably not as amazing as it sounds on the outset.
Okay. I think the point she was making is it makes it difficult to produce medications to fight opportunistic fungal infections because mushrooms are so much like us, they have to be very careful in what they're attacking with those medications. So I think that's where she was going with it. If I wanted to give...
the other interesting...
Go ahead.
So, sorry, just to go off of that point. I mean, humans kind of evolved with mushrooms over time, and I think that is the reason why our immune systems respond so well to mushrooms, is because our immune systems have had to interact with mushrooms. For example, if you take in a breath, almost every breath you breathe, at some point you're breathing in fungal spores, you're interacting with fungal spores. So our immune systems are kind of hardwired to deal with these things. And I like to think of, when you're ingesting functional mushrooms, it's kind of like taking your immune system to the gym, right? You're giving it little bits of these things and it's able to react to them and strengthen your immune system. And yeah, I mean, we've been dealing with mushrooms as a species for quite a while.
Interesting. Tell me how you, give me a typical day and how you use mushrooms. Do you start the day with coffee and then through the day? Typically, how do you use them?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of mushroom coffee. I'm actually drinking one right now. So, I do what you said at the top of the hour is just put lion's mane in your coffee. I like to do that a lot. I also like, a blend of mushrooms to add to the coffee. And when I'm traveling as well, which I do a lot, I like to use just capsules because they're quite convenient and quite easy to use. And the other thing I really like to use is cordyceps as a pre-workout. I think I mentioned it's really good for energy. I like to use it if I'm going to the gym or before I'm working out. So I do use a blend of mushrooms. The interesting thing is that different mushrooms are good for all sorts of different reasons. So you can kind of incorporate them into your life however you think you're going to get the most benefit.
If I go and talk to my doctor and say, gee, I'm thinking about taking a mushroom supplement, what do you think that person is going to say?
It's hard to say because, obviously I'm not a medical doctor myself,
right?
But, who knows? I mean, there's no better person to talk about your own personal health considerations than your doctor because they know exactly what you're doing and they know your specific situation, but they might not be as familiar with functional mushrooms. So it's hard to say, we get a lot of customers that say like, our doctor says this is great, or some people even say like our doctor like recommended we go and find some of this, but other doctors might not be as aware of what mushrooms can do. I think, the more we learn and the more research is being uncovered, the more doctors or people in the traditional medical fields are feeling comfortable with this stuff. So it really is a broad spectrum. It's hard to say what most doctors would say about it.
I can't let you go without at least touching on the whole psychedelic mushroom thing. The lots of legitimate research happening, and they're now legalized in many places in the United States. I understand you're in, I think, Vancouver. Is that right?
We're near Vancouver, in Canada.
Yeah. And so that profile is also changing there. Do you see that ever being a part of your business?
I mean, potentially. It's hard to say, right? It's funny because like we draw these lines between what's a functional mushroom and what's a psychedelic mushroom. Mm-hmm. And mushrooms don't have those lines, right? It's just a spectrum of mushrooms creating crazy compounds. They don't know if
they're legal or not, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So I tell you what, I'm a fan of mushrooms. Obviously, I'm a fan of what mushrooms can do for our health. And I'm also a fan of making people healthier and happier. If at some point introducing psilocybin mushrooms into our universe to make people healthier and happier can make sense, both in a legal framework and also, in the framework that this is what people want, then it's something we could definitely consider. I think, now there's just too much gray area. Well, it's not even gray area. It's just illegal. And we're not sure how that's going to evolve over the next little while. Of course, some people are just kind of selling these mushrooms anyways as a way of kind of civil disobedience. We cover some of that on our channel. For example, in Vancouver, you can just walk into a dispensary and buy mushrooms. In other cities, that might not work so well. So either way, I can tell you, I'm interested in mushrooms personally, and I want to see how this evolves over the next, call it 3 to 5 years.
I know another thing that you care about, and I like to end with, and that is growing mushrooms. If I'm interested in doing this for medicinal purposes or just because I'm curious, what's the starting point? Where do I go?
So probably the best way to start is to start with what's called a mushroom growing kit. So a mushroom growing kit is basically just the same fruiting blocks that commercial mushroom growers use. And you can get that home and it's already myceliated, and all you really need to do is put a slice in the bag and put it somewhere where the mushrooms can thrive, somewhere that's humid, somewhere that's, relatively cool, and you can grow mushrooms that way. Once people do that with a kit, if they have some success and they like it, they thought it was beneficial, then there's a whole rabbit hole you can go down in terms of learning how to grow mushrooms, from making your own grain spawn to building out a lab to playing with cultures and trying all these different techniques. But yeah, definitely the best place to start is to just Google mushroom growing kits or gourmet mushroom growing kits. You can get lion's mane kits, you can get reishi kits, you can get shiitake kits and oyster kits, all sorts of mushrooms. And they'll ship them right to your house and you'll have mushrooms within a couple of weeks usually. So that's probably the best way to start.
Is it difficult? Are they a fussy crop to nurture?
It depends on the species. Some are really easy. Lion's mane is incredibly easy. I've even had, lion's mane blocks that I forgot about in the corner of my garage. And one day you walk out there and there's a big mushroom fruiting off of it. Oyster mushrooms can be pretty easy as well. Shiitake, maitake, those ones can be a little bit trickier. So it really depends. There's, beginner kits like lion's mane, but a little more advanced like maitake. I would say if you want the most success, start with lion's mane or oysters. And you're probably going to have, it's pretty hard to screw that one up.
That sounds like the one for me. We've gone all over the place today. Is there any place you want us to go last here? Any place you want to take us? A closing thought?
Not really. All I can say is I love the fact that more and more people are getting interested in mushrooms. It's pretty cool. Lee, when we started this a number of years ago, I thought I was the only one. I thought I was the only one doing this. And over the years, to see all of the stuff coming out with mushrooms and more people interested in mushrooms just really makes me happy because, mushrooms have so much to offer the world. And I'm still learning things every single day. So I would say, if you want to learn more about mushrooms, feel free to check us out on our YouTube channel. We put out a lot of content there. I just love talking about mushrooms.
And I'm glad you did. Thanks. That's Tony Shields, the founder of FreshCap Mushrooms. You'll find them online at freshcap.com. Thanks, Tony.